my dad's a carpenter growing up, so I always loved kind of building stuff and, not so much like building houses as much as just building more small furniture and treatment or, but I've always been a big math numbers guy as well. So the whole idea of rooms and angles and all that stuff is very interesting to me. And I actually took a few classes on it at SAE of, room design and different things. And I've read a few books on it. So I have a decent enough grasp on understanding, what's going to be okay versus not okay in those situations. But I mean, there's guys out there who are like crunching logarithmic algorithms for this type of stuff that I'm not going to that. I'm not going to that level, but I could walk in a room and go, no wonder you can't hear anything because it's all sheetrock, or you have those thin little RLX panels that are, 1 inch deep that aren't doing anything below 8K. Anything with the bass, it's not doing anything below 8K. Those things are just, the ones I'm talking about, those RLX, like they look like the mattress foam that you sleep on sort of things.
Totally.
Yeah, I mean, it's just general physics. I mean, what? Go ahead, I'm sorry.
No, it's cool. So actually, you spoke with Asher on the Instagram Live, and he was also a guest on the show. So the guy that did his acoustic treatment did this acoustic treatment, and he also did my previous acoustic treatment.
Nice.
And so when I just moved my studio about 2 months ago, he's like, yeah, man, like it's been like 6 years, like I've learned a lot, and so I ended up doing a new acoustic treatment instead of just moving the old acoustic treatment, and I'm like blown away with how much more balanced the bass is now.
Yeah.
How the stereo image, it was like instantly changing my mixing, instantly.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, you can't. Yeah. It's like trying to paint a picture with your eyes like half shut or like swollen shut or like glass. Like imagine you trying to paint a picture without your glasses. You'd maybe create like a face that was recognizable, but it'd be smeared and mushy, and the nose would be too close to the eyes. Like, yeah, it's just not. Yeah, I mean, it's a hard thing to do when the foundation's off.
What was interesting about this guy's name is Omer Carney, and like he's done acoustic treatment for Waves. Even
really?
I think he built Waves the studio.
Oh wow.
Waves is based out of Tel Aviv, and he's like, I think I have more experience than anybody else in the world at like tweaking home studios. Like, I walk into a room, like I've done this.
Yeah.
Like, so like people in America are very like, they'll crunch the numbers, they'll do like all this like, fancy, angles and stuff. And it's like, okay, how do I get this working? And he's like done it enough times that he's just like figured out this like method, I don't know.
I mean, home studios are hard just because you are going into a room that, was built to be a bedroom or a kitchen or bathroom, or you know what I mean? Like they were never built like to be studios. So I mean, you're always kind of fixing problems and just managing problems more than you're really doing anything. And I mean, and then low end, even in rooms that are built specifically for music, is just incredibly hard to do anything with because low end is just so long and massive. I mean, there's some of the bigger rooms. There's a mastering engineer, Brian Lucy, who like I forget the name of his studio, but it's basically just it doesn't have walls. Essentially, they're all like false walls, so that the air, like the low end, just completely goes through it and is allowed to live, infinitely. So you're technically hearing it correctly, I guess. Again, that
Wild.
Gets beyond my sort of
at a certain point you got to just like work with what you got, right? Like,
the point that I usually get with is like I'll get into these times where like I'll be slow, or like when I bought my new speakers, I was like, all right, well, I'm going to be torn down. I might as well like get all math and like geeky and start putting new panels up and time align and phase stuff. And like, it's all fun. But then, 2, 3, 4 days pass and I'm like, okay, I got to get back to work. Like I don't have time to kind of continue to, spend doing this. So it's either, I hire somebody who can do it all way quicker than I can, or I just live with what I have and then move on. So
totally. So speaking of work, what does your workflow look like these days when working with artists and also when approaching a mix?
Sure. I mean, that's kind of large, I guess.
Let's start with like, how do you work with the artists that you work with? And we can move on to the mixing after that.
Yeah. I mean, for starters, I don't know. I guess it's split pretty much. I don't work with a ton of artists as much as I work with like producers more so.
Awesome.
As mixing, there's usually a disconnect between artists truly understanding sometimes of the whole process, which I guess is maybe an education thing at some point. But either way, I mean, I know what you're asking. I think every situation is different. I mean, and that's kind of part of the whole game, I guess, is understanding what the producer or client is, what they need, what they, desire, if they have a deadline or how they like to be worked. Some people just, we transfer me files and I download them and mix them and they send me, their thoughts and then that's it and they pay me. And then other people, like to be a little more hands-on and understand what I'm doing and ask questions and say, hey, what do you think of this? And send me, 3 different productions and then we kind of work through it together and I go, hey, I think this one feels best. Let's try it with maybe the piano without, a ton of reverb on it and let's try it this way. And, it's maybe a little more of a collaborative effort and they trust me and, we work together. So it's different on every aspect of how I work with different people and different artists. And it always kind of comes from just the place that they're at. Some are a little less experienced, some are a little more experienced. Some are coming for me just because they know I'm in a room that I can trust and listen to and they don't trust their room. Some are coming to me because they just started producing and they don't know if their overheads are out of phase. So,
yeah.
And it's my job to kind of understand that and then, do what'll help them get to the point where they need to get their music out that will sound a way that they want it to sound and have people interpret it the way that they intended for it to be. So,
nice. Do you have like a revision process? Is it like how long does it take you to get a mix out?
Like out from delivered files to like mix one or like till I get paid and
yeah, I guess top to bottom, including getting paid and
again, I mean, totally depends.
Hopefully you're getting paid before you're totally done with it.
Sure, yeah. I mean, well, I do a 50-50 thing, so it'll be 50 up front and then, 50 when the master's back.
Nice.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's one of those things that depends. I mean, depends how busy I am at the moment. Sometimes I'll get files and they're not getting downloaded for a week just because, I've got other things going on. Other times I download them and get them back the same day. I mean, it's all dependent. And it depends how, sometimes I have people get feedback back to me within, 2 hours of me sending the files, and sometimes it takes them 3 weeks. So I just had I had an EP project go for like 3 or 4 months just because, they took their time and wanted to listen and live with the songs and then send them back. And then I got a revision and then they were like, all right, well, give us another week. And then, there's 4 people in the band by the time they collected all their thoughts in one email,
Yeah, totally.
We send it to mastering and then we get it back from mastering and then, so I mean, everybody's at their different pace. I mean, and then I could knock out a song in 3 days and they all love it. Yeah. So again, I mean, it's just management at that point and understanding the different levels and knowing what has to be done and then getting one person in and out and doing that. So
how do you keep track of all the projects that are coming in?
I wish I had some fancy, like people like to, talk fancy CRMs and customer relationship management softwares and all that stuff. And none of those have just ever worked for me. I don't know. They've always required more effort on my end to enter data and keep track of things than it was worth to me. So, I mean, I'll just have a Word doc or a spreadsheet or something or pen and paper and just kind of write down what I have to get done this week, who I'm waiting to hear from, who I have heard from and what they're waiting on me for. And then just cross it off as I go. And then as other things come in, I just add it back to the list. And then it's just basically a never ending to-do list, essentially.
Yeah, that's what life is, I think.
Kind of. I mean, I don't know. That's kind of just what works for me. And then I'm sure it's probably not the best way. And I'm sure I've probably, let things slip through the cracks or maybe lost potential work or even, whatever it may be along the way. But it's just what's worked best for me. Every other sort of, I don't know, management software has just been a little more work than what it was worth, in my opinion, at least. I know some people.
I totally hear that. I'm not using a CRM or I mean, I'm a bit more old school as well.
I see a value in it. Like I really do. I just don't know if there's a value in it for like what you and I do. I mean, my girlfriend makes candles and if she didn't have systems in place of managing stuff, she'd be in debt. She'd be in prison because, taxes would come after her and they'd arrest her.
Yeah.
So I think there's definitely like places for those sorts of, management softwares and different things. It's just, it's a little harder for what we do. Even, I mean, to go back to, you asking how I work with clients. I mean, it's hard because everybody's different, and those softwares are based on systems that are like traceable and like executable and redone. And I don't think I've ever had, two clients be the same. I've never had two, producers come to me and like need the same thing or the same onboarding, or they've never asked the same questions.
Totally. I mean, being in production is always a B2C, right? It's never like a B2B, business to business. It's always business, it's always like you're dealing with like, a person, and like it's very one-on-one.
Well, yeah, I mean, you said it perfect. I mean, you're dealing with a person. You're dealing with a human being who is just as unpredictable as, you and I are. Who knows what'll happen or what they want to ask or need help with, in that moment.
Yeah.
So
totally. It's probably nice to work with a lot of producers, I guess, as opposed to like artists, because I feel like producers have a better idea of what they want things to sound like, and they're obviously coming to you with more experience of like why I would come to you. You know what I mean?
Totally. Well, I mean, yeah, I mean, exactly. I mean, even the artists who do come to me are usually artists/producers. So like they'll be a band or an artist or a duo or whatever. And, while their main goal is to be the artist, they're also just self-recording and self-producing and all that. And then they come to me, and then, I'm calling them an artist, but in reality, they're actually really a producer,
Right.
Yeah, I mean, that's a producer's job. I mean, a producer's job is to decide the sounds they want, and then it's just my job to make it better and make sure that the sounds that they've committed to and have decided are the ones that convey the emotion and feeling that they want. It's my job to just make sure those are now felt by the listener, make sure those translate to the listener, on whatever device they're listening to, or if they're walking through the grocery store, that it, impacts them in that way.
Totally.
So yeah, I mean, yeah, working with producers is ideal.
Yeah, totally. And do you listen to rough mixes a lot, or is that like, do they usually send you rough mixes, or is it something you avoid until you kind of get your take on it? Like,
yeah,
what do you think?
I mean, I'm always listening to the rough mix. I mean, that's the rough to me is the answer. No matter whether I think it's good or bad, it's the answer. It's just my job to then make it, because I mean, that's what they've been listening to. That's what they're basically like, hey, this is what feels really good to us. This is what we think is great. Even if they don't think it's great, there's always something behind that rough mix that is the answer. Even if it's like one of those mixes where I was saying earlier, where the bass is like way too loud, or the vocal's way too loud, like that's still an answer to me. That's still me going, okay, I better keep the bass very loud because that's important to them, and that's giving the song all of the weight and body to it. Or they have the vocal so loud because that's what they care most about. Or maybe that drum fill's really loud because they thought it was super cool. And if I bury that in my mix because I think it's dumb, guess what the first revision is going to be? Is they're going to want that drum fill louder. So the rough mix is always the answer to me. It's just my job to make it better.
Nice. Do you kind of flip between the rough mix and the actual mix while you're mixing? Like,
I do.
Like
so
in like a different like output kind of thing.
I do. I have my I have the PreSonus Central Station, which is my next upgrade at some point, and I have it set up so that like TRS-1 is my main Pro Tools that I'm mixing through, and then the digital is the rough mix, which is just playing in Pro Tools at the same like line that exactly. So I could switch between those seamlessly, and then my aux is the 1/8 inch output of my computer, which is playing Spotify. So I could go between all three at the same time, which is really nice, and it's the reason I've kept the Central Station around for so long, just because I like that workflow.
That's awesome. Something to consider for all y'all folks, including me.
yeah, it's really nice. I mean, there's other ways to do it that's maybe a little less like intensive and doesn't use as many outputs and kind of crazy routing as what I do. I mean, you could use the Magic AB software, or
I think there's like a knob that you could just like, it kind of like takes a few outputs and then puts it, I don't know.
There's a bunch of ways to do it. I mean, I didn't invent that idea. I mean, there's guys, I stole it from another studio who like did it the same way, and I was like, I love that. I'm stealing that. Yeah, I mean, it comes back to the old days. I mean, the consoles used to do that, when they had like a monitor section. They used to have, multiple ins that you could route anything to anywhere. Yeah, for me, it's a good workflow thing. It does get me in trouble a lot because sometimes I find myself referencing too much and just swapping back and forth, that I'm just totally lost on perspective, that I just have to walk away from it at that point. But yeah, it's a nice workflow for me. I like it.
Awesome. So how do you get a mix started? What does that look like for you? Do you have a mix template? Is it kind of a clean canvas?
Yeah, I definitely have a template. The template's mainly there just for I mean, it's there for my outboard stuff, just so I'm not like constantly patching and redoing that sort of thing.